Hi guys, Rational Leftist here. And just to make a quick disclaimer, the following video is quite long, it's around 35 minutes. Therefore I recommend grabbing a snack and a beverage before you begin watching. I also kindly request that all viewers watch the video in its entirety before leaving a comment, like or dislike, so you can get the full extent of my argument before making your own. I will do my best to respond to any comments, but please give me time. Thank you.
So I got this comment from Kian Doherty, and I thought it was worth addressing because it's something that I do get thrown at me by SJWs, and I just thought I'd explain it. Sargon, why do you rarely criticise the right? It always seems that you rarely talk about issues that matter like abortion, etc., and are constantly apologetic to the right-wing community. There is obviously a reason the EDL fucking endorsed you, or the fucking EDL endorsed you, and it's obviously not because they liked your Total War plays. Okay, that's a fair comment, and I think it deserves an answer. I rarely criticise the right because I don't really care about the right.
But does caring about something determine whether or not you should make a video on it? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
As far as I'm concerned, they're normally in the wrong. And so it's just... I just haven't got any time for them. I don't want to improve them, basically.
That doesn't really make sense. I'm sure you think the left are usually in the wrong as well, yet you make videos about them. Saying you don't want the right to improve doesn't make a lot of sense to me. One of the things we should strive for as leftists is to try and get the right-wingers and the conservatives and so on to have a heart. Surely.
Because when a sensible person receives criticism, even if that criticism is harshly delivered, and with an eye to mockery, a sensible person will remove their ego from the situation and then analyse the mockery and the criticism and find the, to find the actual criticism and then say, right, okay, is that something about myself that they have a legitimate point about? And if someone sensible does that, then they'll take pains to try and fix that problem. Even if it's a long process, they'll say, okay, I'll try and do this in future. I don't want that to happen to the right. I don't think I can make them improve in the ways I want, like I think I could the left. Or maybe that's just me rationalising. Maybe it's because I always considered myself the lefty, and so I want to improve my team. But either way, I don't know what I'd say to them. I would basically be having the same arguments you have with them, and so I don't think it'd be all that productive or all that remarkable.
Sargon, it is imperative that we get the right wing to reform. We need them to be better. As a result of people like yourself continually criticising the left and also the rising right-wing populism born out of reactionary behaviour, we've seen a huge shift in the political discourse to the right. It is therefore safe to assume that the right are probably going to be in power for quite some time. If we're going to have conservatives in power, we need them to be better. We need them to actually give a damn about the people they're supposed to be governing. You yourself, in a video from May 13th, 2015, made a video titled "The Conservative Party is Your Enemy," in which you give a harsh but ultimately a very good criticism of the Conservative Party. I think you missed the mark a little towards the end of the video by advocating a political party that has next to no followers, like that would somehow be a legitimate alternative to the Tories, yet overall the video was a very good criticism of the Conservatives. I know you're aware that the Conservatives are worse than the alternative. I know that you know having them in power will be terrible for the working class. Someone with your subscriber base and reach could have an extremely positive effect on modern politics, but this isn't going to happen if you focus all of your criticisms on the regressive elements in the left.
Or even worth listening to. And honestly, I think there are a lot of people on the left who feel how I feel. I mean, I did an audience survey back when I had about 300,000 subscribers, and about 67-70% of my subscriber base consider themselves left-wing. They're just really pissed off at the left because of this collectivist identity politics bullshit.
But what you don't seem to understand is that these regressive elements of the post-left, as I call them, that are so enthralled in identity politics, make up a tiny but vocal minority of people. They're also largely a fad. they're going to fade away in time, and there's only so much we can really say about them. Most of what's been said about them and their ideology has already been said. It seems most anti-SJW YouTubers are now just cherry-picking random articles from aggressive news sources in order to make videos. Also, why do you say collective like it's a bad thing? Society is a collective. Your pro-individualist libertarian ideology is one that gives birth to neoliberalism. When you focus too intently on freedom of the individual, the collective gets ignored. Just how much freedom does one have before their freedom encroaches on the freedom of others? It's all well and good having personal liberties, but where does that end? Freedom to exploit? Freedom to pay your workers whatever you want? Freedom to ban blacks and gays from your establishment? You have to be realistic. It seems like you're very much caught up in identity politics yourself. You associate yourself with libertarians despite holding quite a few socialist views, such as support of universal healthcare and, from what I've heard, the renationalising of the railways. You know, I think it's important to remember that ideology is just a spook, so to speak. It's not a material thing, and no one ideology is perfect. You may largely consider yourself libertarian, but are you going to limit your views and opinions only so far as the libertarian ideology allows? Because it certainly seems that way. Despite believing in some of the policies that Labour propose, due to the fact they're not an inherently individualist libertarian party, you won't support them. It's why you advocate for an unknown libertarian party as an alternative to the Conservatives, despite them having absolutely no power to stop the Conservatives. The Conservatives that you'll allow to get into power again and again simply because your ego won't allow you to break free from the individualist libertarian ideology and support Labour. Your lack of criticism of the right and your lack of support for the most viable left-wing party in the UK means you are indirectly responsible for all of the evil things the Tories do. Cutting welfare, ending disability allowance, the implementation of austerity measures, the selling off of public assets, and so on. I really think you need to break free from this ideological purity you seem to have because it's hurting the left. You need to stop getting hung up on this idea of individualist libertarianism and focus on making Labour better, rather than, say, simply not supporting them out of spite because they don't adhere to your strict ideological purist individualist libertarianism. I personally try to remain as non-partisan as possible. Admittedly, I do hold a few socialist or social democratic views, so ideologically speaking, calling myself a democratic socialist and a social democrat makes sense when I'm trying to explain what my ideology is to other people. However, I don't treat socialism or social democracy as some pure holy thing. I won't always agree with the socialists or the social democrats. Sometimes I'll hold views that they don't. That doesn't mean I wouldn't support them though, just because they don't hold the same exact political ideology that I do. That doesn't make sense to me. It's irrational. Let me have Zizek explain why ideology can be so cancerous, because he can explain it a lot better than I can, to be honest.
According to our common sense, we think that ideology is something blurring, confusing our straight view. Ideology should be glasses which distort our view. And the critique of ideology should be the opposite, like you take off the glasses so that you can finally see the way things really are. This precisely, and here the pessimism of the film, of They Live, is well justified. This precisely is the ultimate illusion. Ideology is not simply imposed on ourselves. Ideology is our spontaneous relationship to our social world, how we perceive its meaning, and so on and so on. We, in a way, enjoy our ideology.
All right.
To step out of ideology, it hurts. It's a painful experience. You must force yourself to do it. This is rendered in a wonderful way with a further scene in the film where John Nada tries to force his best friend, John Armitage, to also put the glasses on.
I don't want to fight you. Come on. I don't want to fight. Stop it. No!
And it's the weirdest scene in the film. The fight takes 8-9 minutes.
Put on the glasses.
It may appear irrational, because why does this guy reject so violently to put the glasses on? It is as if he is well aware that spontaneously he lives in a lie, that the glasses will make him see the truth, but that this truth can be painful, can shatter many of your illusions. This is a paradox we have to accept.
Put the glasses on! Put them on!
The extreme violence of liberation. You must be forced to be free. If you trust simply your spontaneous sense of well-being or whatever, you will never get free.
Look!
Freedom hurts.
I mean, for fuck's sake. I have to be the gadfly in this situation because you don't seem to understand how cancerous the left is.
But you're saying left as if the entire left wing is cancerous and irredeemable, which I think is dishonest and not true.
I mean, the right is not good to poor people, but I don't think they're trying to actively undermine Western civilization. I don't think they're going to start pumping out an ideology that's going to advocate for, like, open borders, advocate for communism and socialism and all this sort of crap that's infested the left.
You say things like socialism has infested the left. Socialism has always been around. It's always been on the left. It's existed since the 1800s. What you're having a problem with isn't communism or socialism. What you're having a problem with is SJWs and the regressives. They're not socialists. I mean, when was the last time you heard an SJW or a regressive character talk about trade unionism? When was the last time you heard them talking about making conditions better for the working class? When was the last time you heard about that? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The people that you have a problem with, they're not socialists. They are left libertarians, like yourself, who just so happen to be enthralled in identity politics. During the elections in America that happened recently, the SJWs and the regressives didn't support Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was the most progressive, most left-wing, most socialist candidate who was running for presidency. They didn't support him. They supported Hillary, and they supported Hillary simply because she was a woman. That is not being left-wing. That is identity politics. That's all about looking after your special interest group while not doing a damn thing for the working class. And that, my friend, is anti-left-wing.
I don't think they're going to do any of that sort of shit. I think at worst they will be mildly oppressive to poor people. And I say mildly. I don't think they're going to be that oppressive to poor people and minorities. I think, it'll be like, well, you just have to, and I would advocate against it. Whatever form of oppression they are imposing, I would definitely advocate against it. But the things that the left are fucking arguing for and fighting for are so systemically catastrophic in the long run if they were to get their way. And they call themselves radicals. They call for the overthrow of capitalism. They call for communism and socialism. They call for all of this cultural Marxist stuff, to sum it up in a phrase. You know what I'm talking about.
There is no such thing as cultural Marxism. This is terminology that was developed by the right wing to label those on the left that disagreed with them. This is really where Sargon starts to lose me. When he talks about cultural Marxism, when any YouTuber talks about cultural Marxism, I can only just sigh, because it's just so stupid. And, I mean, let's look into it, shall we? Cultural Marxism. Okay, so when you search for cultural Marxism on Google, the first link that comes up is a link to the Wikipedia article on the Frankfurt School. And I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs about the Frankfurt School to give you an idea of what it is, and then I'll basically talk about the whole cultural Marxist element. So, the Frankfurt School is a school of social theory and philosophy associated in part with the Institute for Social Research at Goethe University, Frankfurt. Founded during the interwar period, the school consisted of dissidents who felt at home neither in the existent capitalist, fascist, nor communist systems that had formed at the time. Many of these theorists believed that traditional theory could not adequately explain the turbulent and unexpected development of capitalist societies in the 20th century. Critical of both capitalism and Soviet socialism, their writings pointed to the possibility of an alternate path to social development. Although sometimes only loosely affiliated, Frankfurt School theorists spoke with a common paradigm in mind. They shared the Marxist Hegelian premises and were preoccupied with similar questions. To fill in the preconceived omissions of classical Marxism, they sought to draw answers from other schools of thought, hence using the insights of anti-positivist sociology, psychoanalysis, existential philosophy, and other disciplines. The school's main figures sought to learn from and synthesize the works of such varied thinkers as Kant, Hegel, Marx, Freud, Weber, and Lukács. So what is all this cultural Marxism nonsense people like Sargon talk about? Well, it's a conspiracy theory perpetuated by the right. In the Wikipedia article for the Frankfurt School, this is discussed in depth. I'll quote a couple of paragraphs to give you a better understanding, but I highly recommend reading the Wikipedia article to get the full picture, which I will link below. So, here we go. Cultural Marxism conspiracy theory. Cultural Marxism, in modern political parlance, refers to a conspiracy theory which sees the Frankfurt School as part of an ongoing movement to take over and destroy Western society. However, the term remained niche and rarely used until the late 1990s, where it was appropriated by paleo-conservatives as part of an ongoing culture war in which it is claimed that the very same theorists who were analysing and objectifying to the massification and mass control via commercialization of culture were in fact in control and staging their own attack on Western society, using 1960s counterculture, multiculturalism, progressive politics, and political correctness as their methods. This conspiracy theory version of the term is associated with American religious paleoconservatives such as William S. Lind, Pat Buchanan, and Paul Weyrich. By the way, sorry if I got those names wrong. But also holds currency among alt-right/white nationalist groups in the neo-reactionary movement. As I said, I'll link the article down below and perhaps some other articles as well, so you can see just how nonsense this whole thing is. But it really does reveal Sargon's true political leanings and his flawed logic. This is a guy who doesn't criticise the right, in fact allies and associates with many members of the right, including now self-proclaimed capitalist nationalists like Lawrence Southern, and believes in right-wing conspiracy theories like cultural Marxism. Hopefully you can see now why Sargon's logic doesn't really make a whole lot of sense and doesn't hold up, especially when he believes in conspiracy theories like cultural Marxism, like there's some kind of global plot to destroy Western civilization.
All of this intersectional stuff that is just designed to tear apart the Western liberal tradition is coming from the left. So it has to fucking stop, because that is the thing I think needs protecting more than abortion rights. Okay, you can't get an abortion. Oh, okay. It sucks. It sucks for you. What are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to have to raise my child. Oh, well, there we go. Millions do it. It's not the end of your life.
This is where you begin to be dishonest, not just wrong. And it also seems to be where your libertarian values end. You seem to be under the impression that the left are going to end free speech. That's never going to happen, ever. And I think deep down you know it. If you really believe free speech is going to end, you're a conspiracy theorist at worst and paranoid at best. Even if the left were going to end free speech, as you put it, at most, they would merely end hate speech, for example, advocating for the end of certain people or promoting genocide. If you're implying the right to advocate for genocide of black people, for example, is more important than the right to control your own body, you're insane.
And I mean, imagine have you seen any of Tim Pool's work in Sweden? There was a psychologist, a professor at a university, who wanted to speak out against political correctness to Tim Pool, but felt so afraid that he had to have his voice and appearance blurred and masked in some way, because otherwise he would get in a lot of fucking trouble. Who knows where they'd fucking go. And that's just to point out that, yeah, okay, political correctness has become like a pathology in Sweden. And it has become the new fucking thought police. And that is literally what it is. I mean, you know what an implicit bias test is, right? You look it up. I'm not joking. These people want to police your fucking thoughts. They care about whether you're biased or not. That's my business. I have the biases I want to have. It's not your right to come into my head and make accusations going, you're biased. Well, so what if I fucking was?
I honestly think you'll find most of us on the left are against this kind of thing. As I mentioned earlier in this video, these people are a minority, and just because they thrive on college campuses doesn't exactly make them some unstoppable authoritarian threat that spells disaster for Western civilization. I think you'll honestly find that the most authoritarianism you'll experience won't be under a left-wing government. Certainly not Labour. It will be under a conservative government. One that, as I'm sure you know, is allied with the man who controls most of the media here in the UK. If you want to talk about thought control, look no further than the Murdoch press. These people shape public opinion through their media empire that absolutely dominate public opinion in the UK. There's your real authoritarianism. There's your control.
It doesn't mean I'm going to actually discriminate against someone. I know that I'm biased in a way if I'm biased in that way. I know I'm biased towards Total War games that you're fucking thing. I know I'm biased to my own countrymen. It's fine. I can account for this bias when I'm making decisions. It doesn't rule me. And you think everyone is just ruled by this. And even if they were, it's still not a mandate to try and fuck with my thoughts. Just fucking no, man. Just fucking no. You don't have the fucking right, and so I'm not going to fucking accede to it. Just no. The end of story. And you know what, right? I don't think the EDL really have much of a political ideology, from what I've seen of them. They just seem like extremely nationalist, but not in any particularly, like, intellectualized way. They just want to stop these fucking foreigners because they have problems with foreigners.
But let's apply some dialectics here. Why do you think they have problems with foreigners to begin with? I'm sure you'll turn around and say immigration and Islamification, but let's be honest, these brain-dead white nationalists have their opinions shaped by the media that's presented to them, and their ideas are perpetuated by their own echo chambers that are based off their already preconceived notion of how things are, regardless of the facts. And acting like these dumb white nationalists aren't a problem and not criticising them because you yourself also dislike foreigners is just stupid. When you don't speak out against things like white nationalism and these reactionary movements, you legitimise them as they have no opposition, and in turn their movements grow. You know what happened the last time this happened, don't you? I don't think I need to remind you. You're so afraid of free speech being destroyed. What do you think would happen if white nationalists started getting seats in Parliament? Granted, that will probably, hopefully not happen. But let me ask you this. Do you really want the only opposition to white nationalists be the black-clad anarchists who you're so against? Wouldn't you rather argue against these people and not leave their criticisms to one of your most hated political groups who use their fists to talk instead of their fucking words? Think about it, Sargon.
That's why. That's literally their opinion. Word for word, in fact. Because I've spoken to them. I don't even... I mean, a lot of them were probably a lot ex-Labour voters. Until Labour started bringing in massive amounts of immigrants. And then they're like, shit, I need to vote BNP. Because these immigrants are really fucking things up around here. Because...
I do agree with you that net migration levels need to be lowered, and perhaps we need to implement stricter immigration regulations. However, what you need to understand is it's much better for us to get the Labour Party to reform their immigration values or immigration policies than it is to just vote in, say, the Conservatives just because they say, oh, don't worry guys, we're going to lower migration. As far as I know, the Conservatives haven't even really come up with a plan to lower migration. They just say they're going to do it because that is what the public want to hear. I understand that immigration is an important issue to you and to myself and many other people in the country, but really it boils down to this. Would you rather live in a country that implements policies that benefit the 99% and have a few brown people walking about, or would you rather live in a country that purely benefits the 1% but happens to be a white ethno-state? I know what I would prefer. I think your priorities are in the wrong place. It makes much more sense to get the Labour Party to change their views on immigration than simply to vote for another party on that one issue. That is illogical, irrational, and I don't think it would be very good for the country.
Some people in poor areas of the country, they actually feel that way. That's how they actually feel, and that's why people are doing it. It's not that they're evil, it's that they're scared. And I think that I watched the footage of that guy at the EDL endorsing me. He also endorsed Rocking Mr. E, which is very interesting because he's very firmly a classical liberal as well. He hates fascism, he hates communism, and he sees a lot more communism than he sees actual fascism. And so do I, to be honest. And I can completely understand why they endorse us, because we are trying to represent the English intellectual tradition and say, no, that this is a better tradition. It's produced freer societies, more prosperous societies. This is better than fucking socialism, than collectivism, than any of the continental crap that comes out of France and Germany. Ours is fucking demonstrably better because it's produced better and more fucking expansive societies.
That's funny. You're honestly going to say that we, the UK, are better than continental Europe. So we're better than France, are we? Because we're classically liberal, whereas they are, say, socialist. Oh boy. Okay, let's look at the facts, shall we? France's net migration is less than half of that of the UK. Surely that's something you can get behind. They have higher fertility rates than us. They have less adult obesity than us. They have more forest area than we do. Less CO2 emissions than we do. Way more protected waters than we do. Better quality of life than we do. Longer life expectancy than we do. Better net income than we do. An earlier retirement age. More holidays than we do. And all the while enjoying an economy very similar to our own. I don't understand nationalists like yourself who are so proud of the UK. We can do better, way better. But guess what? Having the right wing in power isn't going to make any of this better. It's going to make it worse. It will further dissolve workers' rights, increase austerity measures, and consolidate power into the hands of the few rather than the many. And yet you still bang on about how great individualist liberalism is, and condemn socialism. I honestly don't understand you. Your worldview seems to be purely ideological, not one necessarily based on fact or reason.
Produce people who are concerned with racism and sexism. People who are concerned that people should be free to make their own choices and shouldn't be held down by arbitrary characteristics that they had no choice over, that are physically preventing them as much as humanly possible. And simply not discriminating on the fact that someone's black or female is an easy solution. It's an easy fix. You don't have to do anything. It doesn't cost any money, or it shouldn't. These social justice courses, all in universities or in governments or in corporations, all these, honestly, they will have a diversity officer in every single one of these giant corporations, and they've got all these government NGOs and all this that are all that sort of nonsense. And it's like, and you sit there going, why don't you criticise the right? It's like, because the right actually isn't really in control still. The right has achieved traditional political power, but the left commands social capital.
Nonsense. The right wing control both political and social power right now. You know, you right wing apologists, and then there's also right wingers, libertarians, conservatives, alt-righters, Trumpists, and so on. Mainstream political discourse has shifted very far to the right because of these types of people. The right wing also own a huge majority in classic media like newspapers and TV networks. Saying they don't command social power is just ridiculous. How do you think people like Trump got into power? Duterte, Erdogan? These right-wingers have huge support because of people like you who have shifted mainstream political discourse to the right.
That's what they do. They command pressure, and they can pull a huge amount of eyeballs onto something and then morally grandstand over it, whether it's true or not. And this is exactly what's happening to Spicer right now. Oh, he denied the Holocaust. No, he fucking didn't. No, he didn't. He called them Holocaust centres because he's an idiot. Not that he's malevolent. He's not trying to deny the Holocaust. And this thing, right? Why am I constantly apologising for it? I'm not apologising for them. You're just fucking lying.
Yes, and this is wrong. But this isn't something inherent to the left. The right-wing lie and manipulate the news too. If you're so annoyed when the left does it, why don't you feel that same anger when the right does it also? This has been going on since time began, by the way. Nothing's new.
And it's just like, man, if this is all you can do, you will never refute me. And if you can't refute me, maybe I'm right and you're not.
Well, I don't think you're right, and that's why I'm making this video. As you listen to this voice clip right now, I've already spent 3 days working on this. It's difficult to make video responses when you also have 2 jobs and a relationship to manage, but I felt you deserved the time for a properly thought out response video. Hopefully you appreciate that I'm not just cherry picking and actually making a hopefully compelling argument for why you should be criticising the right.
I'm just saying that it always comes down to petty ad hominems, and you never actually address my arguments, and you get more and more annoyed that my channel keeps getting bigger and bigger, and every week a new piece comes out decrying me as a terrible, evil, right-wing, misogynist, racist, Islamophobic troll, and yet my audience grows and theirs shrinks.
I don't believe in making ad hominems. I'm sure you're a nice guy in real life. I don't know you, but I, unlike many others, especially on the right, by the way, understand you're just a person who has a certain set of beliefs and ideologies. And I criticise these beliefs and ideologies, not the individual. That's also why I'm able to criticise Islam as a religion, but not Muslims as individuals.
It's so bizarre. I've never met a more committed neoliberalist than a progressive. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. What do they need? Open borders. Fucking what? Why? Oh, more companies. GDP. What? You give... What about, like, individual wages? Why would that not be a more useful metric of how quality of life is in the country, rather than the overall total? These people, man. So yeah, oh God, the left is just a danger to our civilization at this point. Do you understand?
I cut out most of the last part of Sargon's video because I either agreed with him or he reiterated points I already addressed. However, it is telling that he says, "I've never met a more committed neoliberalist than a progressive." Well, he's somewhat right in making the association between liberalism and neoliberalism, but I don't think progressives are inherently neoliberal. Progressives are social democrats, not neoliberals. The social democrats and progressives of America supported Bernie Sanders, not the actual neoliberal candidate, Hillary Clinton. I think sometimes these political labels get thrown around carelessly. Different people have different ideas of what certain political labels mean, like in America, social democrats, socialists and communists often get thrown in one basket, especially by the right wing there. And the term liberalism often gets used to describe the left, even though liberalism can lean to the left or the right, and in more recent years there has been quite a surge in right-wing liberalism, with the growing emergence of anarcho-capitalists and conservative liberalism. Just take a look at Dave Rubin, for example. That being said, I want to close this video by saying this. My beef isn't with Sargon as an individual. It was some of his ideas and his excuses for not criticising the right. I believe his logic, at least in this particular video, was quite flawed, and despite him being critical of people who are slaves to ideology, he himself is just as much of a victim of it as anyone else.
I'm giving you a choice. Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
I already am eating from the trash can all the time. The name of this trash can is ideology. The material force of ideology makes me not see what I'm effectively eating. It's not only our reality which enslaves us. The tragedy of our predicament when we are within ideology is that when we think that we escape it into our dreams, at that point we are within ideology.